Most people who walked past Michael Carter never looked him in the eyes. To them, he was just another homeless veteran sitting beside a cold brick wall in downtown Chicago, wrapped in an old military jacket with tired hands and worn-out boots that had seen too many winters. Every morning the city moved around him like a river that never stopped flowing. Businessmen rushed toward tall glass buildings with coffee in their hands. Tourists laughed while taking pictures. Cars screamed through wet streets. And Michael sat there quietly with a small cardboard sign beside him that simply said, "Veteran, anything helps." There was a time when Michael never imagined his life would become this. 30 years earlier, he had stood proudly in uniform, believing he was fighting for something bigger than himself. He remembered the sound of helicopters cutting through dark skies. He remembered carrying injured soldiers through smoke and chaos. He remembered fear. But more than anything, he remembered brotherhood. Back then, people called him a hero. Now, most people acted like he did not exist. Life after the military had not been kind to him. The nightmares followed him home. The anxiety destroyed his marriage. The drinking cost him his job. And one painful year after another slowly pushed him onto the streets. At 65 years old, Michael owned nothing except a backpack filled with old photographs and memories he could never escape. That winter was especially brutal. Snow covered the sidewalks like frozen waves, and the wind cut through the city with cruel force. Michael had not eaten a real meal in nearly 2 days. His stomach twisted with pain as he sat outside a small restaurant near Michigan Avenue, watching strangers enjoy warmth and comfort from behind glowing windows. He pulled his jacket tighter around his body and lowered his head against the cold. That was when he noticed it. A brown leather wallet lying near the curb beside a parked black car. At first, he thought someone else would grab it. But after several minutes, nobody noticed. Michael slowly stood up and walked toward it. His knees ached with every step. He picked up the wallet carefully and opened it. Inside was more cash than he had seen in years. Hundreds of dollars folded neatly beside several credit cards and a driver's license. Michael stared at the money in silence. His hands trembled slightly. For a moment, the noise of the city disappeared around him. All he could think about was food, a warm bed, dry clothes, maybe even a cheap motel room where he could finally sleep without fear. Nobody would blame him for keeping it. Nobody would even know. He looked around at the crowded street. People passed by without paying attention. The universe had handed him a choice. And for the first time in a long time, Michael felt truly tempted. He closed the wallet and sat back down against the wall. Snowflakes drifted through the gray sky while he stared at the ground, wrestling with thoughts he could barely control. Then his eyes slowly returned to the driver's license. The man in the photo looked successful. Clean suit, perfect smile, expensive haircut. Probably rich enough to replace the money without even noticing. Michael sighed deeply. Years ago, during training, his commanding officer once told him something he never forgot. Character is who you are when nobody is watching. Michael closed his eyes for a long moment. Despite everything life had taken from him, he still wanted to believe he was a good man. Even now. Especially now. So he stood up and walked toward the address printed on the license. The snow grew heavier as he crossed several blocks through freezing wind. Cars splashed dirty water onto his pants. People bumped into him without apology. But Michael kept walking. Eventually, he arrived outside one of the tallest office buildings in the city. Bright lights glowed behind massive glass windows while luxury cars lined the entrance. Michael hesitated before stepping inside. Not really. 10 minutes later, the two men sat inside the restaurant Michael had been staring at earlier that afternoon. Warm lights reflected against the windows while plates of hot food covered the table. Michael tried not to eat too fast, but hunger had followed him for too long. Daniel watched him silently. Something about the veteran reminded him of his own father, who had also served in the military years earlier. After dinner, Daniel asked Michael about his life. At first, Michael avoided details. But little by little the story came out. The war, the trauma, the divorce, the alcohol, the loneliness, the streets. Daniel listened carefully, without interrupting once. By the end of the conversation, his eyes had changed. He no longer saw a homeless man sitting across from him. He saw a human being who had been abandoned after sacrificing years of his life for others. Before leaving, Daniel handed Michael a business card. "Be at this address tomorrow morning at 9, he said. Michael looked confused.
Why?
"Because I think you deserve another chance." That night, Michael slept at a small shelter downtown, but for the first time in years, he could not stop thinking about hope. The next morning, he arrived at Daniel's office 30 minutes early. A woman from Human Resources greeted him kindly and handed him clean clothes along with access to a shower. Michael stared at himself in the mirror afterward, barely recognizing the man looking back. Later that morning, Daniel offered him a job helping manage maintenance operations for several company buildings. The salary was modest but stable. Michael felt tears fill his eyes as he accepted. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, life began changing. Michael rented a tiny apartment. He attended counseling sessions for veterans. He stopped drinking completely. For the first time in decades, he felt proud of himself again. Then something unexpected happened. One employee from the office had secretly recorded the moment Michael returned the wallet in the lobby. The video was uploaded online. Within days, millions of people across America had watched the story. News stations called Michael a symbol of integrity and resilience. People flooded social media with messages of support. Veterans groups reached out offering assistance. Strangers mailed letters thanking him for reminding them that goodness still existed in the world. But the moment that affected Michael the most happened several months later. One evening, he received a phone call from his daughter, Emily. They had not spoken in almost 11 years. Michael sat silently holding the phone as tears rolled down his face the moment he heard her voice. "Dad," she whispered. "I saw your story online." For a second, Michael could not speak. Emily began crying softly. She told him she had spent years angry and hurt watching addiction destroy their family. But seeing what he did reminded her of the man she used to admire when she was little. The man who taught her honesty. The man who carried her on his shoulders during parades. The man she missed every single day. A week later, father and daughter met again for the first time in over a decade. Michael hugged her tightly outside a small coffee shop while snow gently fell around them. Neither of them wanted to let go. And in that moment, Michael realized something powerful. Returning that wallet had not only changed his future, it had given him his family back. Sometimes the world looks at people and only sees failure, only sees weakness, only sees someone broken. But every person carries invisible battles hidden beneath the surface. And sometimes all it takes is one decision, one act of honesty, one moment of humanity, to change an entire life forever. On cold nights, Michael still walks through downtown Chicago from time to time. Not because he has nowhere to go anymore, but because he remembers what it felt like when the world stopped seeing him. Now, whenever he passes homeless veterans sitting alone beside frozen sidewalks, he always stops. He always looks them in the eyes. And he always reminds them of something life almost made him forget. Your story is not over yet.